During this time of isolation, I find myself looking back on more exciting times like summer. During the summer, I went to the Minnesota State Fair, where they have an abundance of delicious foods. One of the desserts I had there was called fry bread, so I was thinking, why not bring the fair food home to you during times like this? And you can too if you follow this recipe. So the first step that you're going to need to do is actually either a couple hours prior or the night before. I prefer doing it the night before so then I can sleep in and it takes more time, so I don't have to be rushed in the morning to wake up early to make it when I'm hungry. So what I did is I put the dough on a cookie sheet, and then it was frozen bread dough. You can also make homemade bread dough, but I just prefer to buy the frozen bread dough because it's easier. And then you spread it out evenly because obviously you can see that they get pretty big. I brought the smaller ones. There's also different size of bread that you can get, and then you just cover it in saran wrap, and then you can leave it sit in your refrigerator from, it doesn't really matter how long you let it sit for, but it's recommended 13 to 15 hours. As well as another step you can do is if you're one that likes to wake up early and make breakfast, then you can leave it out 3 to 5 hours after you wake up, and it should be unthawed and has probably risen by then, and then you can start making it. Another way I have tried, but I do not recommend, is I forgot to take out the bread dough one night and I really wanted it in the morning, so I defrosted them in the microwave, and then I waited for them to rise, and it only took an hour, but I don't recommend that. So after your bread dough is thawed out, you're going to want to get all of your ingredients and utensils ready so you don't have to be rushing as your dough is being made. So what I always get is vegetable oil. I use the rest of it. I already poured it in the pan. And you're going to need a medium to large saucepan. I have a medium one. And it doesn't really matter if you get a medium or large one. It kind of just depends on how big you want your bread dough. So obviously if you put one in there and it expands and it's too big for your pan, the next time just split it in half. You're also going to need a paper bag, but I just used an empty sugar bag that I already had for your toppings, and then I just poured some sugar in there. I don't know if you can really see it, but there's sugar in there. And then you're going to need a utensil to flip your dough. Usually I use tongs, but today I'm just going to use a fork. It doesn't really matter what you use, just whatever you're comfortable with, as long as you don't burn yourself. And then a plate for when you're done. So I have a plate. So right now I'm just waiting for my vegetable oil to heat up. It doesn't really matter how much vegetable oil you put in it, as long as when you put your dough in, it's not going to touch the bottom, because it does float. So as long as you have enough to where it's going to float, you're fine. I probably filled mine a third full, so if you have that much full, you'll be fine. When I heat it up, I have it on high, but when I start actually making them, I put it on medium, so then they're not cooking too fast to where I can't manage it fast enough. And I don't want to burn them, because that does happen very easily. So to test and see if the oil is hot enough, I just ripped off a small chunk of a piece of dough, so then I don't have to wait for an entire one to cook, but if this one cooks pretty fast, then I'll know that it's done. So now that I have tested that my oil is hot enough, I'm going to take my dough. So you can either use full or half pieces. So obviously, I'll show you, you can see that these are pretty big. So I'm gonna do half pieces since I have a medium saucepan. So the one that I pulled a chunk off of, I'm just gonna use that one. When I spread it out, I'll see if I need to split it up a little more. I hold it up to the window so then I can see which spots are very thin. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, you can't really, but then the big chunks that I just pull apart. And it doesn't have to be the perfect shape. You could make shapes if you'd like to, but I always just make random shapes. I used to make these with my grandma all the time, and so we would always try and make really weird big shapes with these. Yeah, I think that should be, yeah, that's small enough for my pan. So once you have this, when you go to put it in, you're going to want to put the bottom side first, so then when you drop it, the top side will go to the other side of the pan. That way, if there's hot oil that splashes out, it's going to splash away from you because you don't want to get splashed with hot oil. So I'm going to drop this in here, and I can show you what it looks like. So it looks like that, and then to be able to tell if it's done, you can see on this side it's starting to. It's going to get some brown around the edges, and that's when you know you're supposed to flip it. So then there is some bubbles, but once you like shake it and stuff, you can like stab the bubble and it'll pop. Or if you like the bubbles, you can keep the bubbles. But I'm just going to flip this. And it doesn't have to be perfectly brown. That'll still be like cooked and warm, and it'll cook through on the other side as well. But you kind of just wait and see how it sits above the water and it's not touching the bottom. That's how you know you have enough vegetable oil. And you can always, if you don't like when there's white spots, which I don't prefer, they're fine. But if you don't like them, I always flip it back over and then I cook it a little, fry it a little bit more. But once you're done, you're gonna want your paper bag with your sugar in it, or if you want to use like a bowl or something that has a lid, whatever works for you, but I just prefer a paper bag. And then you're gonna grab your paper bag, and you're gonna carefully take this out, and you don't want to like shake it so the water, the oil falls off, because that's what makes the sugar stick to it. Make sure you close the top of the sugar. I have done that before where I just like squeeze it shut. That doesn't work. You need to make sure you close it, and then you're just gonna want to shake it so it covers the sugar. There's other toppings you can use as well, like you can do sugar and cinnamon or just cinnamon, or like when you're done you can put like chocolate on it. You can do a lot of things with it. I prefer just sugar. So now I'm going to take this out. Just take it off my hand. Shake off any extra sugar and then put it on the plate. And I can show you what it looks like, and you can see the mini one that I tested from earlier. So that's what they look like. During this speech, I taught you how to unthaw the dough, fry the dough, add the toppings, as well as I informed you on the utensils and ingredients that you will need. Anyone can make this recipe as long as you follow the steps correctly. If you're bored during quarantine or you want to reminisce on State Fair memories, start frying.